Hey, hello everybody. This is Shirley from Yes Biscuit, and we are talking today with David Smith from No Kill, Colorado, about an incident that happened in July, right?
Yep.
Um, with an English setter, a 10-year-old dog who was a lifelong family pet. His name was Watson, and he bit a child in the face, a toddler who accidentally fell on him when he was asleep and startled him. And after the bite, the dog immediately withdrew. So it wasn't any kind of sustained attack, but still, the dog ended up at a shelter on the kill list. So, David, tell us how this happened. Why did the shelter require the family to surrender the dog?
Well, because it was a bite case, well, actually, because the family actually went to them. The family originally had adopted Watson from them 8 years previous. So, when this incident happened, they, of course, they care very deeply about their child and their dog. They took the child to the emergency room, made sure that the child was okay. And then they were looking for help. So they went to the shelter for help. And the shelter understands this whole process. When you're a person, you don't necessarily understand this process. And they're like, well, you surrender the dog, we hold it for 10 days, because that's what they do with bite cases. And sign this paper. And the paper actually demands on a surrender that, you release full legal custody and you request the animal to be euthanized. There's no other choice on the paper, right? That's what it says. Then it goes on to say, we decide whether or not we do that, and it can be transferred to a rescue or adopted out if we so deem. And that was the conversation they had with the shelter. So they thought, okay, I'm signing this, but it doesn't really matter because they said we can get a rescue or an adoption. So, and you have to realize in that moment, it's a incredibly stressful moment, right, for the family. And they're talking with what they consider, as I steal from you all the time, a safe haven, a refuge. That's where they are, right? At a shelter that they believe that they're there with people that are going to help them. So they're signing the paperwork and everything because, they have a new dynamic at home with the toddler and a dog that they've had for 8 years. They don't know it's safe. They went to the professionals that they thought could help them.
Right. And we should probably mention for viewers that child bites with the family pet are very common. Toddlers are learning to walk, they fall quite regularly, they grab onto things such as ears and fistfuls of fur. They don't know about personal space or anything like that. So this kind of thing unfortunately happens, but it doesn't mean we kill the dog. How did the Colorado community become involved in this?
Well, so what happened was the family actually went and did the right thing. Right now, they surrendered the dog and they believed, but it's okay, we can get Watson somewhere else. So they reached out to rescue community. They had friends in rescue community, a good friend of mine, where I found out about Watson, and reached out and said, hey, this is what happened. And we think he needs to go, to a rescue so that he could find a family and be happy. He's a 10-year-old dog. They had him for 8 years. It's not like they didn't love this dog. They just really didn't know what to do. And so a rescue stepped up immediately. It was an English setter rescue, Southwest English Setter Rescue, SWEEZER, I think. I guess that's how you say the acronym. And said, yeah, sure. They looked at it. They talked to them. They understood the incident. As you said, the dog was sleeping. The toddler fell on the dog. He did bite the child, but he didn't attack the child, right? There's a big difference there, right? One bite, and he was like, oh, what did I do kind of thing. And he kind of walked away. And so they were quite sure that this was an accident that was preventable. And they were as much responsible as anyone for what happened. And the dog was not. So they got a rescue to come forward. And the rescue got in touch with the shelter, and the shelter said, nope, dangerous dog, we're not giving him up. And at that point, um, we started, well, when I say we, the Colorado community started talking and chattering on social networks about this dog, and it became an issue that people really cared about. And rescues, another shelter came forward after a local no-kill shelter, and asked the shelter that had Watson, hey, could we take the dog? They said no again. Actually, they didn't even answer for like a day or two. And we knew the day that Watson was in danger, right? They have a 10-day hold. At the end of that 10-day hold, there is no law in Colorado that prevents you from killing a shelter animal for any reason whatsoever, right? There's no guardrails on that decision. It's just up to the shelter. So we knew on the 10th day, we had to worry. We didn't know what they were going to do, but it felt like if they're not going to release him and they're saying he's dangerous, that he's going to die. So people started posting, and we started getting a little more organized on how we were going to approach them. And No Kill Colorado and others, we put out lists of elected officials, how to contact the Denver Animal Shelter, as well as how to contact elected officials about this problem. And the community just rose up very quickly, and very passionately. I believe for the most part, I actually, as far as I know, it was completely peaceful. It was just generally asking, please save Watson. Let's get him somewhere to a safe landing.
You mentioned the shelter had deemed him aggressive. Is that the reason that they didn't want to transfer to a rescue?
Yeah, like they didn't say it completely outright, I think, at any time, but they kept posting two things. They kept posting or they did post the document that said, oh, the family asked for euthanasia. The family went on the news on another channel and said, yeah, we don't want him euthanized. We actually want him to go to a rescue. We have a rescue. So, but they kept putting that out as one thing. The other thing they put out was talking about the Dunbar scale. Dunbar scale is 1 to 6, I think 6 being like a fatality, and 1 being, I don't even know what a 1 is, but it's a nothing burger. And a 4 means that there was, damage to the skin and stitches would fall into a 4. And they were using that. It's a 4. So this animal has to die. But with the Dunbar scale, the problem is Dunbar scale only looks at the physical ramifications of an incident. It doesn't look at any other context. So again, I'm going to repeat it. The dog was sleeping. The child fell on the dog. The dog was surprised, and did this. This is a 10-year-old dog. It's not like this happened, 8 times. It didn't happen twice, right? It happened once. He's 10 years old. And they're going, oh, Dunbar scale says dangerous dog. And it's like, no, there's context here. You're not paying attention.
Right. And we should mention too that with senior dogs, we don't know specifically in this dog's case, but many senior dogs are visually compromised. Their hearing is compromised. They have pains as far as aching joints, things like that. They aren't necessarily going to be as aware as a younger dog. And so that's how these kind of things happen. So,
And it was a new environment, right? The child wasn't there for 6, 7 years. I don't know how old the child was. I don't know how old the toddler is, right? So for this was a new experience for this dog recently. I mean, obviously the child was around for a while, but maybe I just started walking, right? Toddler means just starting walking and toddling, right? Not very good at it yet. So
yeah, I think the news articles that you sent me, I think they mentioned the child was 2. So this Denver Animal Shelter, I'm assuming this is a shelter that does kill animals.
Yeah, it's a municipal shelter. They improved years ago from like a horrific save rate to, they're always scratching and the high 80s or something like that. I didn't actually look. I should have looked before here. But we know that they kill healthy and treatable animals. The and you know, this was a case where you want to look at it because this case wasn't about Watson, right? It was about what you just asked. Animals are being killed in the Colorado shelter system. Not just this shelter. It's not about Watson. It's not about this one shelter. It's about the systemic problem of easily killing an animal for convenience. And that's what we felt this was.
Um, as far as you touched on how the community advocated for Watson's right to live. Um, did the shelter respond to that? How did they respond to that?
They went pretty dark for the most part. They would only talk to like one news station, I think, that they were talking to and putting out statements. Like, they didn't get on camera or anything like that. I don't think anyone there wanted to be interviewed. I know that people reaching out directly to the director and some other people were not getting good responses. There was, a phone line that people were calling, and some of them did get through. And they felt that it was confrontational at worst, or just apathetic and not useful at best. So they really weren't responding in any way to the people that were really invested in actually saving Watson. They were just trying to protect themselves for the most part.
So what eventually happened? The dog ended up being transferred, right?
Yeah. So then, near the end of the 10 days, we learned that they were going to speak with the city attorneys on Monday, because Sunday was the day, and we were terrified that it would happen on a Sunday because there was nothing we could do. There was no way we get to a court. By then, we finally realized maybe we should try to get a court order. It didn't seem like it was something we needed at first, because we thought, oh no, they'll release Watson, right? This is reasonable. We weren't that worried, and then we became aggressively worried. And then it was the weekend, and we're like, oh, now we have no legal recourse. Very hard to get a hold of anyone on the weekend. And so, but we found out that they were going to talk to attorneys on Monday, and we were worried. There was one of two things happening. Were they looking at how they could release the dog, or were they looking at how they can justify not releasing the dog? We were terrified of those two things. But the good news is, somewhere along the line, they came up with their solution was to give it back to the family. And that kind of fascinated me, that was a decision. I was very happy about it, because the family was ready to transfer the dog to a rescue, if that happened. And so they did accept the dog. They immediately transferred to a Sweezer as the first rescue that came up. But all I could think of is, this proves what we were trying to say from the beginning. Again, not about Watson, not about the shelter. You were saying it was a dangerous dog. It could not be safely put back in the public. And not only did you give it back, but you gave it back to the family where the incident happened. So what that says to me is, this dog isn't dangerous. Otherwise, you would stay by that. And I would expect you to. If there's a truly dangerous dog, and we know, surely, that there's a very small percentage of animals, especially in the dog category, right, in the large dog, that are irremediably suffering in some way that we cannot help them, right? And that's when you actually, when we use the word euthanasia. And this dog wasn't there, and it couldn't have been there, because if it was there, there's no way they would have let this happen, which means that the community was right, the rescues were right, the other shelters that were standing up were right. And for some reason, this shelter was digging its heel, and it has the legal right to not let that animal go. And I think that's where we really need to look. We need systemic change of making it possible. No rescue in the world, or sorry, no rescue I know, I should say. I shouldn't say in the world, that's a little broad. But I don't know a single rescue that easily takes a dog with a bite history. This dog had multiple. By the time we were done, we had like 7. We only 2 actually went to the shelter and got rejected. We had 5 more lined up behind it. By the time when this was all done, you don't get rescues and shelters lining up for a dog with a bite case unless if it's clearly not there. And it took Denver Animal Shelter almost 2 weeks to figure that out, and it was only because of the public pressure.
So, because of the community involvement, what do you feel like this says about the Colorado community? Do you think that people are becoming more aware of how this their local shelter operates, and maybe they want to see some changes?
Yeah, I do, and I think we have a real opportunity here. And we got we received a lot of people talking to us and understanding, you know, the issues that we actually have, and that there is opportunity to change, because the Colorado community is fantastic. And when I say that, every community is fantastic. It, you need to wake them, because they don't actually know. As I said before, it's called a shelter. It sounds like a safe place. The general public doesn't actually know what goes on there. Advocates like you and I and all our friends and the people we work with, they know, and you try to get it out, but it's not until you have an incident like this that you can clearly show there's a different narrative with shelters than people think, right? The shelters have this, oh, public safety, public safety, public safety. Public safety is compatible with no kill. It's compatible with letting animals go to another place. If there's a rescue or shelter that stands up, it means that they understand what's going on, because they do not step up for the difficult cases if they don't know what they're getting into. They can't afford it. They don't have time and resources. So if a shelter just put out all the animals they say that they're going to put on a kill list, I believe you'd have a lot of rescues stepping up to save some of those animals, not every single one. And I'm talking about cats and dogs and ferrets. It's medical issues and behavior issues. It's not just this one thing. Again, the subject is broader, and I think we did wake them up a little more. The Colorado community was already good. We have an amazing number of adopters. I think I told you this before. If you only look at the animals that Colorado takes into the shelter system from inside Colorado, not the transfers from out of state, we have more adopters than we need for every animal entering our shelter system. We have thousands more adopters than we need. We transfer in tens of thousands from out of state, so then the numbers get skewed that way. But if there wasn't for transfer, we'd have too many adopters, right? So the Colorado community is great, and I think that's true in many places. I realize many places still have a lot of problems, but Colorado people aren't actually better than people from Kansas or Oklahoma or Texas, right? They're not. They're. I think they just got that. They've been more progressive, and we have a good rescue. So we have 350 Colorado shelter and rescues in Colorado, and that's an amazing number. And they reach a wide audience, and I think the Colorado community is fantastic. And they showed it here when they came up. This isn't the only story, right? Um, uh, a tragic one was a year ago. There was a dog named Echo at Ark Valley. We could do a whole segment on that. He was killed. And that dog had rescues and a trainer ready to take him on. There's a dog right now in Parker called Zion. He's been held since November 2022 on a legal case. And it's insane. This dog is essentially in solitary confinement. And we need to look at these cases, and they need to be looked at one-on-one. But the Colorado community, I think, is ready for this. So,
You've talked about seeing this as a larger issue, not confined to just this one dog or this one case. So, what are some possible solutions to this issue?
well, we're always looking at legislation that would help. I actually don't like to start with legislation, but if that's where we have to go, that's where we could always go. There's lots of model legislation out there from the No Kill Advocacy Center that are good models for us to actually look at and think about. But, it would be great if it would be great if the shelters did it themselves, right? Reforming a shelter doesn't have to be legal, but if it needs to go legislatively, then we can always move forward on that. We do have a lot of people that are interested in looking at how we improve the shelter system in many ways. And this is one of them. How do we allow an animal the freedom to be transferred if another organization comes in? So we're looking at that right now.
That sounds good. Anything that we didn't touch on with this case that we should?
No, I think we covered a large swath here. I really appreciate you doing this. I mean, the main reason I wanted to do this is because, again, not about Watson. It's about systemic change. I use the analogy when we see the tragic event of like a cop shooting a dog, which happens a lot, right? And we immediately the gut reaction, the human gut reaction is that cop has to be punished, kind of thing. Well, no, that's not the problem. There's a systemic problem of the way that we train police to deal with a reactive dog. And it could be reactive in a friendly way. They could be wagging the tail coming towards you barking, and that could be friendly, right? If you don't understand the body language. And this is the same thing, right? It's not about Watson. It's about this experience over and over again. As I said, there's Watson, Echo that died last year, Zion, who is in danger right now. And we have to look at these not as individual incidents, because we don't have the time and the resources to fight each one individually. We need to look at it systemically, and we need the community to really start embracing that. And that is a little harder.
And I think too, to get these shelters that are using this one very narrow scale, you mentioned the Dunbar scale, to determine if a dog should live or not. There are so many other points of context to be considered, and it's a shame to narrow it in that way. So hopefully, with the momentum that the Colorado community is having from this case, will carry forward and help some of these other dogs. But
hope so.
yeah, yeah,
I'm looking forward to where we go from here. This is, this was a really happy ending. So it's kind of exciting to have a happy ending be a driver for change, instead of the other way, right?
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, David Smith from No Kill Colorado. I'm Shirley Marsh and from Yes Biscuit, and you're watching No Kill in Motion. Thank you for joining us today.